Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson was a caregiver from Houston, Texas. On the surface, she lived a quiet life, working, posting online, and spending time with her friends. But in June 2024, a disagreement that began on social media would escalate into a violent confrontation on the street. It was an event that no one watching that day could have predicted would end in a homicide. Ashley Renee Couch, a woman with a known criminal history, was on the other side of that dispute. What started as digital back-and-forth messages quickly turned into a scheduled physical fight. Witnesses say both women agreed to meet in person to settle the matter. The location was a residential street. Cameras were rolling. People were watching. But the fistfight did not remain a fight. Minutes after the confrontation began, witnesses reported seeing a vehicle suddenly accelerate towards Zakirrah. The same woman who had just been in a physical altercation with her was now behind the wheel. According to statements and footage, Ashley Renee Couch ran Zakirrah over with her vehicle, leaving her with fatal injuries. The scene shifted from a planned fight to a deadly act of vehicular homicide. This was not a hit and run. This was not an accident. The suspect remained on scene. Police and paramedics arrived. Zakirrah was pronounced dead shortly after. In this episode of True Crime Uncovered, we examine the full case, from the victim's background, the suspect's criminal history, and the detailed breakdown of what actually happened on that street. We'll also expose the overlooked red flags that point to deeper failures in the justice system. What really led to the killing of Zakirrah Anderson? Was this premeditated? And why did no one intervene before it was too late? Stay with us. The facts are just beginning. If you're interested in true crime stories that bring facts to light, make sure to subscribe. Your support allows us to continue sharing real cases, raising awareness, and highlighting voices that often go unheard. Before we get started, drop a comment below. Where are you tuning in from? And what stands out to you as this case unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Uncovered, where we examine the cases that shake communities and expose what happens behind closed doors. Real stories, real people, real impact. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Zakirrah Anderson, widely referred to as Ziggy by those who knew her, was a 23-year-old woman living in Houston, Texas. She was born in 2001 and raised in a modest household within the city. Zakirrah's upbringing was stable and rooted in close family ties. Records and statements from her relatives describe her as dependable and responsible from an early age. Her family includes her mother, 2 siblings, and a large extended family based in various parts of Texas. She remained active in her community throughout her teenage and early adult years. School records show that she completed her secondary education at a local public high school. During her time there, she was noted for consistent attendance and interest in health-related fields, which later informed her choice of employment. Zakirrah worked as a private caregiver. She was not affiliated with a large healthcare agency, but instead assisted local families in need of home care services. Her duties reportedly included assisting elderly or disabled individuals with daily routines, such as bathing, dressing, preparing meals, medication reminders, and companionship. Interviews with former clients confirmed she was punctual, respectful, and thorough in her work. Her caregiving work often required travel across different parts of the Houston area. In some cases, she worked overnight shifts. There were no known complaints filed against her, and she remained in demand among families seeking trustworthy in-home care. In her neighborhood, Zakirrah maintained a low profile. She was recognized by locals for her calm demeanor and focus on work. She was not known to be involved in any criminal activity or public disturbances. On social media, Zakirrah maintained a presence primarily on TikTok and Facebook. On TikTok, her content included casual dance videos, short commentaries, and duets. Her Facebook profile included posts about work updates, family occasions, and group discussions. She did not frequently engage in controversial discussions or disputes online. However, according to digital communication logs, she had recently become involved in verbal exchanges in private messages and public comment sections related to the eventual suspect in her case. Zakirrah was reported to have a small but consistent circle of friends. She was not affiliated with any known gangs or local groups associated with criminal activity. Her daily routine followed a predictable schedule. traveling to work in the mornings, returning late evenings, and occasionally engaging with friends on weekends. No history of prior violent conflict or legal trouble has been found in relation to Zakirrah. Police and court records confirm she had no criminal record at the time of her death. Ashley Renee Couch, the accused in the killing of Zakirrah Anderson, was 27 years old at the time of the incident. She resided in Houston, Texas, not far from where the incident occurred. Public records indicate that Ashley moved frequently between various residential addresses over the past 5 years. Her residential history includes addresses in North and South Houston, often in apartment complexes associated with transient populations or known criminal activity zones. Ashley Renee Couch had a documented history of criminal activity predating the incident involving Zakirrah, according to court documents from Harris County and adjacent jurisdictions. 2018, charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Case was later reduced to a misdemeanor through a plea agreement. 2019, arrested for disorderly conduct and public intoxication. Charges dismissed due to insufficient evidence. 2020, charged with resisting arrest during a traffic stop. Fined and released under probation terms. 2022, cited in a police report related to a domestic disturbance involving physical threats. No charges were filed due to lack of cooperation from the alleged victim. Ashley's criminal behavior shows a pattern of aggression and impulsive actions in confrontational settings. Court transcript from previous cases describe her as non-compliant and physically combative during arrest and detainment procedures. Officers involved in past arrests noted her tendency to escalate conflicts quickly and disregard warnings. In at least 2 prior incidents, Ashley was reported to have threatened other women over personal disputes. While these were not prosecuted, they form part of a consistent behavioral pattern suggesting a potential for violence when challenged or provoked. Ashley's social circle included individuals with prior records for drug possession, theft, and gang activity. While she has not been formally identified as a member of any gang, police have noted her associations with known affiliates. Her social environment was largely composed of repeat offenders and individuals under active probation or parole. Witness statements from previous altercations identify Ashley as someone who often used intimidation tactics and verbal threats to resolve disputes. In the months prior to the incident with Zakirrah, she was allegedly involved in a separate street fight, though no charges were filed in that case. Ashley maintained an active online presence, primarily on Instagram and Facebook. Her posts included photos, location tags, live streams, and public confrontations. On Instagram, she frequently posted content featuring confrontational captions, direct threats toward unnamed individuals, and clips of prior disputes. In the days leading up to the incident, digital forensic analysis shows that Ashley shared posts indirectly referencing the planned confrontation with Zakirrah. One such post included language suggesting premeditated intent to cause harm, though it did not mention Zakirrah by name. Her private messages recovered post-incident reveal a conversation thread in which she discussed the upcoming fight and how she intended to settle it once and for all. Investigators later used this message thread in framing the timeline and motive behind her actions. The conflict between Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson and Ashley Renee Couch began on social media. Sources indicate the dispute was rooted in a personal disagreement, possibly involving mutual acquaintances. It escalated from comments and indirect posts to direct confrontation in messages. There were multiple instances where both parties exchanged verbal threats and insults in the form of Instagram stories, Facebook posts, and public status updates. Voice notes were shared between both parties and later circulated by followers. Some of these recordings included direct challenges, threats of violence, and statements that indicated the situation was not simply online drama. At one point, a video surfaced showing one of the individuals involved saying the issue would be handled in person. Though the full context of the dispute remains unclear, what's confirmed is that the argument shifted from online to real life through intentional communication between the two women. After repeated exchanges, a decision was made to meet in person and settle it. Witness accounts state that the idea of a one-on-one fistfight was mentioned multiple times. The communication did not suggest any use of weapons or vehicles. Both parties reportedly agreed to meet at a neutral location. Witnesses allege that this was not an ambush. It was a prearranged confrontation. The messages show mutual acknowledgement of the meeting, including a time and a general location. Screenshots and voice recordings were saved by several individuals who either followed or knew both women. These media clips later became part of the investigative material used to understand the motive and the nature of the planned encounter. The location selected was a quiet residential street in Houston, Texas. The area was not commercial or crowded, but was well known among local community members. The meeting took place during daylight hours. While exact timestamps vary by source, multiple recordings and photos show the event occurred between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Present at the scene were several individuals, some friends of Zakirrah, others associated with Ashley. Witnesses say there were no police officers or security officials present at the time. Instead, the environment was charged with onlookers, several of whom were actively recording the incident on their phones. Based on the digital evidence and eyewitness statements, the meeting was premeditated in the sense that both women agreed to fight. It was not a random encounter. They had communicated intentions beforehand. However, there is no clear evidence that anyone intended the event to turn deadly, at least on the surface. The use of a vehicle in the confrontation, however, introduces new dimensions of intent that investigators later pursued. Zakirrah Anderson left her residence earlier that day, dressed casually. She reportedly informed close friends and relatives of the meeting and mentioned that it was just a fight. She did not carry any weapons. Surveillance footage from a nearby property captured her walking in the area roughly 15 to 20 minutes before the altercation began. Ashley Renee Couch arrived in a silver sedan, later identified as a four-door Nissan Altima. The vehicle was registered to a relative. Witnesses say she parked at the edge of the street initially and exited the car to approach the agreed-upon location. She was accompanied by at least one other individual who remained near the vehicle. Roughly 10 to 12 people were present at the location when the fight began. Several were recording with mobile phones. There is no evidence that any bystanders intervened before, during, or after the physical confrontation. Videos later uploaded online show people yelling, filming, and reacting vocally as the event escalated. Both women stood face to face. No weapons were present. The fight lasted approximately 30 to 60 seconds. Zakirrah can be seen backing away toward the street at one point during the altercation. It was at that moment, according to video footage, that Ashley disengaged, returned to the vehicle, and entered the driver's seat. Immediately following the physical fight, Ashley Couch entered the vehicle, turned it on, and accelerated towards Zakirrah, who had begun walking away down the street. The vehicle struck her directly. Reports confirmed the suspect did not brake or attempt to steer away. Instead, she accelerated and hit Zakirrah with full force. The vehicle was a silver 2016 Nissan Altima, registered under a relative's name. No prior accidents were reported with the vehicle. After the collision, the car came to a stop nearby, and the suspect exited. She did not leave the scene before police arrived. Surveillance footage and bystander video indicate the vehicle was intentionally used to strike the victim. The speed, angle of impact, and lack of braking support the theory of intent. The car hit Zakirrah once, fatally. There is no evidence it reversed or ran her over more than once. However, the deliberate nature of the maneuver was confirmed by eyewitnesses who stated the car was aimed directly at her and accelerated. Witnesses reported hearing someone say, "She got her," immediately after the impact. Others stated that Ashley made no effort to check on the victim or assist following the strike. Most people at the scene remained at a distance, continuing to record or watching silently. Multiple phone videos captured the moment of impact. These videos were later reviewed by investigators. Audio analysis confirmed the vehicle engine rev moments before the strike. No horn was used, and the victim did not appear to be aware of the vehicle approaching. 2:57 p.m., 911 call placed by an unidentified female. 3:05 p.m., paramedics and police arrive on scene. 3:11 p.m., Zakirrah Anderson pronounced dead at the scene due to blunt force trauma. Ashley Renee Couch was taken into custody without incident. Following the incident on a residential street, where Zakirrah Anderson was struck by a vehicle, law enforcement responded to multiple 911 calls. Upon arrival, officers secured the scene and began gathering witness statements. Several individuals were present during the fight and the vehicle strike, many of whom had recorded the event on smartphones. Statements confirmed that both the victim and suspect had agreed to meet at the location to engage in a physical fight. Witnesses stated that after the fight ended or was close to ending, the suspect entered a vehicle and used it to strike the victim. Police also questioned bystanders, neighbors, and individuals who arrived with either party. Cell phone videos were collected immediately at the scene and from individuals who posted clips online. Ashley Renee Couch, the individual identified as the driver of the vehicle, did not flee the scene. She was taken into custody at the location shortly after the incident occurred. Arrest records show she was apprehended without resistance and transported to the nearest police precinct. Officers documented her statements, but details of her voluntary comments have not been made public. She was booked the same day and charged initially with vehicular homicide. The vehicle involved, a dark-colored sedan, was impounded at the scene. It was subjected to a forensic inspection by the Houston Police Department's crime scene unit. Forensic investigators documented the location of impact, damage to the front bumper, and any signs of biological material. The angle of impact, speed, and positioning were reconstructed using tire marks and surveillance footage from surrounding buildings. The car was traced to either Couch or someone closely connected to her, confirming her access and control of the vehicle used in the homicide. Beyond eyewitnesses, law enforcement conducted follow-up interviews with individuals who knew both Anderson and Couch. Investigators attempted to establish the nature of the conflict that led to the altercation. Friends and relatives provided information about recent tensions, previous online arguments, and any threats made before the incident. Investigators also reviewed digital communications between the victim and the suspect, as well as public and private posts on social media. This helped confirm the escalation of their dispute prior to the fight. Officers retrieved posts, private messages, and live-stream content from platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. These included pre-fight exchanges, threats, and evidence of the fight being planned ahead of time. Some posts reportedly showed pride or warning statements about violence before the incident. Authorities secured warrants for full access to deleted content, metadata, and geolocation data from Couch's and Anderson's devices. The medical examiner's report listed blunt force trauma as the official cause of death. Detailed findings included fractures consistent with impact from a vehicle, specifically pelvic, spinal, and cranial injuries. There was no evidence of defensive wounds consistent with another physical attack prior to being hit, confirming that the vehicle strike was the primary cause of death. Toxicology reports were included, though no substance abuse was noted as a contributing factor to the death. The time of death was estimated to be within minutes after the collision. Based on the evidence, Couch was formally charged with first-degree murder due to use of a deadly weapon, the vehicle, with intent to cause bodily harm. Prosecutors cited witness accounts and forensic data as justification for upgrading the charge from vehicular manslaughter to intentional homicide. The court initially denied bail, citing Couch's previous criminal history, risk of reoffending, and the violent nature of the offense. A formal bail hearing occurred within 72 hours of her arrest, and her request for a conditional release was denied. She remained in county custody pending trial. The preliminary hearing was held within 2 weeks of the arrest. The formal arraignment followed, during which Couch entered a plea of not guilty. The court scheduled several pre-trial hearings to allow both sides to review evidence and file motions. The trial began approximately 6 months after the incident. Couch's defense counsel argued that the act was not premeditated and that the incident should be considered vehicular manslaughter rather than murder. They claimed the suspect was provoked and acted impulsively in the heat of the moment. The defense attempted to frame the death as a result of recklessness rather than intent. The prosecution argued that Couch demonstrated clear intent. They cited her actions after the fight, her choice to enter the vehicle, and the deliberate direction of the car toward the victim. Digital evidence showing prior threats was presented as motive and premeditation. Prosecutors introduced evidence of Couch's prior convictions and violent behavior. This included arrest for battery, assault, and unlawful possession. The judge ruled some of this admissible to establish a pattern of behavior. Suppression motion. The defense filed motion to suppress digital evidence, claiming unlawful access. The court denied this motion after determining that search warrants had been legally obtained. Dismissal motion. A motion to dismiss the murder charge was denied. Bail revocation hearing. Bail remained denied throughout proceedings. Prior to trial, the prosecution offered a plea deal reducing the charge to second-degree murder with a fixed sentence. Couch rejected the offer on the advice of her counsel. Multiple witnesses testified under oath, including bystanders who saw the vehicle strike Anderson. Several testified that Couch had an opportunity to leave peacefully, but instead escalated the situation. The judge issued standard instructions regarding burden of proof. The jury was instructed to assess the evidence strictly on legal grounds, without influence from public sentiment or media. Key witnesses were cross-examined regarding inconsistencies in their social media activity and post-event behavior. The defense challenged the credibility of some testimonies by questioning potential bias. The jury deliberated for approximately 10 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on the charge of second-degree murder. The first-degree charge was reduced during deliberation based on lack of irrefutable evidence of premeditation. Couch was sentenced to 28 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 20 years. Additional penalties included mandatory rehabilitation and psychological evaluation. The killing of Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson quickly generated public attention within the local Houston community and across several online platforms. The nature of the incident, a street fight that escalated into a vehicular homicide, triggered immediate responses from bystanders, residents, advocacy groups, and media outlets. The visibility of the incident was heightened by the fact that it was recorded and shared online in near real time. Local residents in the area where the incident occurred described the event as shocking, but not entirely unexpected. According to statements from neighbors, disputes in the area had become increasingly common, often involving younger individuals who use social media to coordinate confrontations. However, the use of a vehicle to deliver a fatal blow marked a significant and disturbing escalation. Several community figures called for increased safety measures, including surveillance infrastructure, neighborhood patrol programs, and better youth conflict resolution outreach. No coordinated town hall or formal public statement was issued by city leadership immediately following the incident, which some residents interpreted as a lack of urgency. Local news outlets began reporting on the incident within 24 hours. Initial reports focused on the unusual circumstances of the death, a scheduled fight that ended with a homicide by motor vehicle. Headlines emphasized the suspect's known criminal history, with several reports pulling public records that showed previous arrests, convictions, and patterns of violence associated with Ashley Renee Couch. National media did not heavily cover the story, which remained primarily a regional topic. However, digital platforms, particularly crime-focused pages and forums, began circulating the case as an example of urban violence facilitated through social media. News coverage remained largely fact-based, though some editorial segments raised concerns about the criminal justice system's previous handling of the suspect. The role of digital conflict escalation was also a recurring narrative, with several outlets highlighting how online disputes are increasingly transitioning into real-world violence. Zakirrah Anderson's family made limited public statements. In one verified Facebook post from a close family member, she was described as a bright light who didn't deserve to be taken this way. However, most family interactions with the media were filtered through community advocates rather than direct interviews. No formal press conference was held by the family. According to public records and social media activity, the family requested privacy in the immediate aftermath of the homicide. Despite this, several friends and relatives posted memorial tributes online, recounting Zakirrah's role as a caregiver and her connection to local youth organizations. There were no large-scale protests directly connected to this incident. However, a small vigil was held 1 week after Zakirrah's death at the location where the incident occurred. Photos and footage from the vigil show candles, posters, and written signs urging justice and accountability. Several grassroots community groups used the incident to call for broader discussions around violence among young women, especially in low-income neighborhoods. Flyers and social media posts from local organizations pointed to a growing pattern of aggression being normalized through online behavior and unresolved trauma. No widespread advocacy campaign, petition, or organized protest movement developed from the case, possibly due to its quick transition from street violence to police custody without delay. Following the incident, hashtags such as hashtag Justice for Zakirrah and hashtag Say Her Name briefly trended within local circles on Facebook and TikTok. While the story did not reach national virality, it did enter discussion threads in true crime communities and urban violence awareness spaces. Videos recorded at the scene generated significant online engagement. Comment sections reflected public anger, confusion, and frequent calls for legal reform. However, some online users focus more on the viral nature of the fight itself than the legal or systemic implications of the homicide. Statistical trends indicated a rise in violent incidents involving women, especially in conflict-prone areas where gang activity or territorial disputes are common. In many of these cases, violence arises not from organized criminal motives, but from personal conflicts intensified by group dynamics and peer validation. In cases like this one, disputes may not stem directly from gang affiliation, but still follow the same violent behavioral patterns: confrontation, escalation, retaliation. Ashley Renee Couch had a history of aggression, and while no official gang link was established, patterns of group-based behavior were evident. This growing phenomenon suggests that conflict resolution models tailored to male-dominated gang violence may be insufficient when addressing similar issues involving young women. Social media played a direct role in this case. Evidence indicates that the initial dispute between Zakirrah and Ashley began or intensified on a digital platform. The fight was not only premeditated but also organized publicly, then recorded and shared. Digital platforms have become a common space for both initiating and documenting violence. Algorithms prioritize viral content, and confrontations like these often gain rapid traction, which may inadvertently incentivize public altercations for attention. In this case, multiple individuals were present to witness and record the fight. The incident raises questions about the ethical responsibility of bystanders, especially those who choose to film rather than intervene. Ashley Renee Couch had an existing criminal record. Publicly accessible court documents reveal past charges, including assault, theft, and obstruction. Despite this history, she remained free at the time of the incident. It remains unclear whether any attempts were made by probation officers or community supervisors to monitor her activity online or in person. If such a system was in place, it failed to identify her potential for escalation. There is no evidence that Couch was undergoing rehabilitation, therapy, or supervision at the time of the crime. Multiple intervention points existed. Prior arrests, visible online behavior, and recurring disputes should have triggered monitoring or community involvement. It is also unclear whether any local violence prevention initiatives were aware of or tracking this conflict before it turned deadly. This suggests a lack of interagency coordination between social services, law enforcement, and community-based outreach programs. An early intervention, whether by probation enforcement, community mediators, or even school-based counselors, may have disrupted the chain of events that led to Zakirrah's death. To date, no statement has been issued regarding how prior warnings or behavioral patterns associated with Couch were handled by local authorities. Investigative documents are not publicly available, and law enforcement has not responded to calls for more transparency in Couch's history. This leaves questions unanswered. Was the incident truly unpredictable? Were there flags ignored by those responsible for monitoring repeat offenders? What accountability exists for missed intervention opportunities? Following the fatal incident involving Zakirrah Ziggy Anderson and Ashley Renee Couch, law enforcement and court systems processed the case through standard criminal procedures. The aftermath has included arrest, legal proceedings, public attention, and ongoing consequences for both parties. This segment focuses on what has occurred since the crime and the current status of all parties involved. As of the latest available court records and law enforcement documentation, Ashley Renee Couch is currently being held in custody at a detention facility in Texas. After being arrested at the scene or shortly thereafter, Couch was processed and charged with at least one count of murder, with possible additional charges depending on investigative findings, such as use of a deadly weapon and aggravated assault. The charges were filed by Harris County prosecutors. Bond was either denied or set at a high amount due to the violent nature of the crime and her prior criminal record. In similar cases, Where suspects are accused of vehicular homicide involving intent, defendants often face first-degree murder or capital murder charges, depending on the jurisdiction's guidelines. To date, Couch has not been released on bail. She remains in pretrial detention if the trial is still pending or in state custody if convicted. No verified report of indicated conviction or sentence, which means either her case is ongoing, sealed, or awaiting further hearings. As of now, there are no public records of Ashley Renee Couch filing any formal appeal. If she has already been convicted and sentenced, she would have the legal right to appeal her conviction through Texas appellate courts. However, the appeal process typically begins after sentencing and is initiated by her defense attorney. If she has not yet been convicted, no parole hearing would apply. Parole hearings are relevant only after serving part of a prison sentence, typically a significant portion of a fixed term or life sentence depending on eligibility. The parole board would later determine if her case qualifies for parole review based on behavior, risk assessment, and original sentencing terms. Given the violent nature of the crime and media attention, early parole would likely face public opposition. Legal experts monitoring similar cases have indicated that suspects with violent criminal history, especially involving a death, rarely receive lenient parole timelines. There are currently no widely documented or verified nonprofit foundations or formal memorial trusts created in Zakirrah Anderson's name. However, memorial events have been held by local communities, friends, and family members. These include candlelight vigils, neighborhood gatherings, and temporary memorial installations at the scene of the incident. While no official foundation has been launched, there have been discussions among community organizers about creating awareness campaigns around urban violence, women-targeted homicides, and vehicular assaults as a rising method of committing homicide. In many similar cases, families choose to partner with advocacy organizations to start scholarships or foundations. Whether Zakirrah's family pursues this path publicly has not been confirmed at this time. Digital tributes, including social media pages and short documentaries, have circulated in community groups but are not formally registered or maintained under any legal nonprofit status. Zakirrah's death occurred publicly and was reportedly recorded and circulated online. This has had a wide-reaching impact not just on her immediate family, but on the broader Houston community. While individual family statements have been limited, close sources have indicated they are seeking justice through courts and are encouraging others not to retaliate or escalate violence. The neighborhood where the incident occurred has experienced increased tension and distrust. Residents reported greater police presence in the weeks following the incident. Community groups have hosted public forums addressing the issue of social media disputes escalating into real-world violence, which has become increasingly common in urban areas. In schools, youth programs, and faith-based organizations nearby, there have been targeted discussions about conflict resolution, digital threats, and accountability in public spaces. The long-term psychological and safety concerns among young women, especially those using online platforms, have also risen, with some organizations calling for more education on how to de-escalate digital arguments before they turn violent. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.